How you doing, everybody? Thanks for stopping by and joining us today for Rollin' Over the Hill on the Live to Roll channel. Thank you for being part of the Live to Roll family. Also, I'd like to thank our sponsors, mobility professionals and urology professionals. They're a great and helpful group of experts that are part of our community and help make things possible here at Live to Roll. So, a big thanks to them. On today's show, we have a very special guest, Candace Cable. She is an accomplished Paralympian and much, much more. We'll be talking to her shortly. As always, make sure to include your questions, comments, and views in the chat. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Soto. I'm a T12 spinal cord injury from a motorcycle racing accident back in 1974, closing in slowly on my 50th year. Looking forward to that. It's kind of a celebration in a sense. So let's get started here, and I'll introduce you to my co-host, Bobby and Luis. Luis, what's up?
Hi, everybody. Glad to have everybody here. Really excited about today's show. Um, my name's Luis. I've been injured coming up here next month on 44 years. I was injured in an industrial accident. I was ejected from an oil rig in North Dakota, and I'm a L3, L4 incomplete SCI walker and roller. So I do walk quite a bit, and I push my wheelchair both. And the purpose in that is so that I don't wear out my joints so I can walk as long as I want to without wearing anything out. Bobby, what's up?
Hey, Luis. Good seeing you yesterday. You and Robert yesterday live
Yeah.
in person. But I'm Bobby Rohan. I'm at C5, C6, quadriplegic of 34 years. Going, I think next month too is my big changeover to the 35. I was injured in a bicycle accident here in Southern California. Enough about us three bozos, but really, it's our guest that we all three of us are super excited. And when I saw Candace a couple months ago, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, we get to finally!" I get to ask the question to see if she would come on and join us here and be one of our special guests. Candace, take it away if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby and Robert and Luis. I'm going to follow suit with the spinal cord injury dates and details. I had a spinal cord injury in 1975 at the age of 21. It was a car accident up in South Lake Tahoe. I was living and working up there as a blackjack dealer, and I got in a vehicle one night with my boyfriend who had been drinking in the club, and I knew as soon as I got in the Jeep that something was going to happen, but I let that peer pressure hold me to that seat. And as soon as we went around a turn a little bit too sharp, the Jeep flipped over and I fell out of it and damaged the T12L1 area. But I have since had a surgery in 2001 to alleviate neuropathic pain. And that moved my spinal cord injury level up to about a T10, T9. And because with those surgeries, the computer assisted dorsal root entry zone, there's the possibility of losing function and sensation. And both of those were lost during that surgery, but also the neuropathic pain was gone. And so it was a successful surgery, because anybody who's listening, or even part of this crew here today, knows that neuropathic pain that can come with spinal cord injury, it doesn't happen for everyone, is incredibly insidious because it really doesn't allow us to be present because it's chronic. And in those, thinking about, how do I get out of pain while I'm listening to someone talk, just always is very distracting. And so I feel incredibly blessed and grateful to have had that surgery. And I told people after it, I would give up more of my body to be out of that type of chronic pain. And I sent the guys a couple of pictures one of them was me, Dave Kiley, and Randy Snow with a woman, and it was our nurse because all three of us ended up having that surgery and it being successful. So, yahoo!
I knew that was Randy. We looked at that picture. I don't know if you have it, Shawn, if you want to put it up real quick. It's a picture of the three of them, but um, the guys didn't know Randy, and I said Randy West, and it's Randy Snow. Uh,
Randy
who,
Snow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. He was a big tennis player, correct?
Yeah, so Randy also was injured in 1975 with spinal cord injury from a big bale of hay falling on him. And he was 16 at the time. He was a tennis player and he was instrumental with several other people. Yeah, there it is. He was instrumental with several other people to advance the sport of wheelchair tennis and build it, as well as he was a wheelchair racer and he competed in the 1984 Olympic exhibition event that he and I were both in that was held during the Los Angeles 1984 games, which was our very first, I think, coming out party for
Yes.
any kind of sports because we got on the big time broadcast and they did up close and personals. And it really was that moment in time where we were moving out of that idea that disabled people couldn't do anything and people had to take care of us and into this like, oh my goodness, look at this, this is real sport, this is real looking wild and dangerous. I think one of the announcers called it silent but deadly during that. And yeah, so Randy was a part of that. And then wheelchair basketball. He was a three-peat guy.
Right.
And like so many of us, we were involved in sport in the 80s that was about building community and building a narrative around the idea that disability doesn't mean that your life is over. It just means reinventing what's possible because society hasn't done that. Like they were hiding us.
Mhm.
My first Paralympic Games was 1980, and at the time we were following the Olympic Games a little bit. There wasn't a contract there is now that says if you put on the Olympic Games, you will put on the Paralympic Games. Back then, it was up to the organizers if they wanted to do it. And that year, 1980, was the Games in Moscow. And the Soviets said, we don't have any disabled people. So we're not going to hold the Paralympic Games. And
Yeah.
our games were in Holland. So it just shows, how tucked away, we were hidden in institutions or destroyed by society, even up into 1980. And so 84 was a pretty cool coming out party.
Oh, I can imagine. We have so many questions, but I think we're gonna, break it down and, kind of want to get started with the beginning, right, Robert? And
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you know, so you were injured in 1975 from, you're in Tahoe as a blackjack dealer, which um, I picture it and I don't picture it, at the same time. I don't know. I just, and I would also ask, like, after
That's
your injury, you could have just come back to that. I mean, how hard is it to flip cards and sit, just tell, hey, we're all going to sit down here. And now you see those tables more often, and a lot of the lower tables, but, you know, so, 19, you're 21, just you have a
yeah.
boyfriend living in Tahoe, and I imagine you're what athletic, right?
So that's a little bit of a conundrum because I was not an athlete growing up and I wasn't into competitive sport. I liked being out in nature. I liked cheering my friends on for sure. And having to participate in physical education for me at school was, do I have to? Really? Oh, okay. Let's get through this. I really was more a cheerleader in the sense of yeah, cheering my friends on to doing their sports. But the competitive aspect of it, for me growing up, felt too much like conflict. And there was some conflict in my home with my parents. They would argue quite a bit and eventually ended up getting divorced after my spinal cord injury in 1975. But I was I was really focused on avoiding any kind of conflict, so competition felt like that. But I was a water skier, I was a hiker. I had learned the season before in winter to ski. And so South Lake Tahoe was really a place where I felt like I could, hang out on the beach and I could work in the club all night long and dance as much as I wanted to and be with my friends. So that night or early morning actually, because it was 4 o'clock in the morning when I got off work. I was swing shift and I loved working in the clubs. It was so much fun talking to people. Oh my gosh. I super enjoyed it. But that night, I really did have that intuitive feeling that I didn't listen to, that something was going to happen and I shouldn't get in this vehicle. And I still got in it. And once it did happen, I totally flipped into the denial aspect of it not really happening. I was totally convinced that I was going to wake up and it was going to be gone. And I remember waking up in the ICU at Barton Memorial Hospital in Tahoe, and my mom walking in, and my mom lived in West Covina in Southern California, and she said, "Hi, how are you feeling?" And I was like, "Mom, what are you doing here? We're supposed to meet in 2 weeks and go over to Hawaii and spend some time with my sisters and my dad, because my dad was working over there for the summer." And she's like, "Honey, you've had a really bad accident." And I was like, "No, no, I'm gonna be fine. I just, I just
Wow.
broken back, broken arm, broken leg, just put a cast on it. Should be good in 6 weeks." I had no clue, right? I see you, Bobby, like stuck in your head. I had no clue that what I was in for, and I had a surgery there where they took some bone from my hip and rebuilt the vertebrae that had been crushed, and a little side note, Dr. Watson, Dr. Stedman, and Dr. Fry were my doctors. They all three went on to be extraordinary orthopedic surgeons. In fact, Dr. Stedman became the U.S. ski team surgeon. And during my
Nice.
skiing career, we ran into each other again. And he was like, "Oh my God, Candace." He goes, "Because you were
Wow.
probably the only spinal cord injured person I ever worked on."
Ah,
Yeah, yeah. So I was at Barton for 2 months, and then they put me on a plane and flew me down to Los Angeles to go to Rancho Los Amigos because my family was down there. My father came from Hawaii as soon as I was injured, along with my two sisters, and he stayed the entire time I was in South Lake Tahoe, coming to be with me in the morning before he went to work because he got a job while he was there. He would come eat his lunch with me, he would have his dinner with me. My dad said one of the scariest things he ever did was watch me fly off in that little tiny plane. He was so scared for me, but he knew that once I'd gotten to down to LA, I was in good hands. And then I spent 4 months at Rancho and met several people. I remember Dave Kiley and Ed Owens coming
Yeah.
into my hospital room, and I'm laying there in the bed, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna play sports," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I don't think
Yeah.
so."
Yeah. It was like what Ed Owens and Jeff Minnebraker, were the
Yeah.
rec therapists were there when I was, and they were all about the basketball, especially Ed Owens. He was like,
Yes, they were all about, "Oh, you're gonna play Will." I was like, "Nope, I'm not playing
yeah.
because you know what? This is going away, people. I'm not gonna be in a wheelchair." And I progressively got deeper and deeper into the denial of it. And because of all the physical pain and the emotional, and I would say spiritual pain of just not knowing and understanding what was happening with me, because before my accident, I was really a kid that grew up feeling like I had every opportunity in my life. I could do whatever I put my mind to, kind of thing. And then after the injury, there was this feeling that I was worthless and there was something wrong with me. And I think that's why I went so deeply into denial and started using drugs to really dampen and get rid of any type of pain I was feeling. And so while I was at Rancho, I I remember they were giving me Valium, and I was just like, yeah, that's not doing it, man.
We
Yeah, it was.
were
We were kind of talking about that earlier a little bit this morning, and
Yeah.
Rancho. Like I said, I was 20 years old. I turned 20 when I was in the hospital, getting out of there, and they're sending you home with jars of Valiums and Percocet, and I go, man, Demerol, that they're weaning you and giving you morphine. I mean, it was that era too, in terms of that was what they
Mhm.
did medically,
Yes.
and
Yeah, they
so.
just plied us with drugs, Robert. Yeah, that
Yeah, I know.
it
I mean, it's
and
like I was a 20-year-old kid, and I go, "Oh, all this," and
did
like,
you have an
okay.
accident? Here, take this.
yeah,
You're
exactly. And it
never
was. I mean,
gonna walk again. Here, take this.
the prescription of Valium. I mean, I didn't have any spasms or anything like that, but I had 30 milligrams of Valium a day, and I had the pain issues, no doubt about that. But I didn't spasm. I wasn't spastic and all that. But man, I had those Valiums there when I needed them.
Oh,
So
I was
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. There
I
was a
didn't
lot of.
have any. Never had any type of spasms. Never.
Yeah, yeah, same for me
Yeah.
because I was ambulatory up until about 10 years ago, um, using crutches and braces and stuff like that. But yeah, in fact, spasms, I didn't want them because this way it would inhibit my walking and all that stuff. But it's just remarkable how looking back and just what they did, because I do a lot of support groups and visiting hospitals now, and they're real limited on what they give out for pain medication. I mean, lots of times some of these
Yeah.
hospitals just give Tylenol, say deal with it, kind of, But so you grew up in Southern California, and when
Yes.
did you when
Yes.
did you leave Southern California?
Well, so I grew up in West Covina in the
Because I
same
live in
house.
San Dimas. I'm in San
Oh,
Dimas.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah. I know all those areas pretty well.
yeah.
And yeah. And so my growing up was I walked to California Elementary, and then Willowwood Middle School was a brand new school. I was part of the first class that went from sixth grade to eighth grade through it,
Mhm.
and we could either ride our bikes or take the bus to that. And then I walked to high school. I went to Edgewood High School,
Edgewood,
and
yeah.
so it was really this tight community that I was really embraced by, and I could basically, on the street that I lived, there was an alley behind our house. And so there was a whole bunch of houses on the other side. And we were all so connected. I mean, there was groups of us families that took vacations together down in Baja, Mexico. And,
Yeah. Yeah,
I could go into
that was the days of the true neighborhoods when you were growing up, right?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. I could walk into anybody's house at any time and they could walk into ours. And my
Yep.
mom and my dad were there for everyone. My dad helped build our community center over by California Elementary. And so growing up in that space really drove home the deep desire to be a part of a community.
Yes.
And yeah, and then uh, I sent a black and white of me kind of standing there. I think I'm 10 years old in that, and I'm going off to Campfire Girls Camp. It's
Yeah.
right by the bus. My dad's kind of in the background with some of the people. And so I participated in all kinds of community activities and things. And I have two sisters and a brother. I'm the oldest. And I have a brother that's 3 years younger. I have a sister 4 years younger. And then my youngest sister is 11 years younger than me. And so as growing up, we were just a really tight community of doing things together and never feeling like we were, I don't know, excluded from anything. Yeah, it was great. I tell people I had a Leave It to Beaver childhood.
Yes.
But I
Yeah.
think that's kind of dated now because people don't really understand the
Yeah, there's
television
some
show.
people. Some people are going, "What? What's she talking about? What she
Beaver
meant
Yeah,
that?"
what?
go on
Yeah,
one of those Nick at Night things or
yeah,
something,
yeah.
and you'll be able
And
to see
did
it.
neighbors have it where, like our neighborhood, eventually we would start making doors between the fences so we can get to our neighbor's backyard,
Yeah.
between. I mean, that's how back in the day you grew up, like you said, we'd go into anybody's
Yeah,
house. There was only
Everybody
two
knew.
houses that people
Yeah,
they shunned upon it because, they just didn't have the kids. And they're like, but everybody else who had kids, it was a free for all.
yeah. Now
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love
yeah,
that you made those
because I know in
fences.
the time when I got hurt, I lived in the same childhood home as, up until when I got hurt, almost 20. And it was funny because that's like you had mentioned, Candace, how long you were in the hospital. Back in those days, they kept you in the hospital 6 months because you did all your therapy inpatient and all that. But so when you got out, you were already in Tahoe. What was the when you left the hospital when they discharged you? What were you going through at that time? What was the big change for you, and also what led you to get into sports? Why did you choose sports?
Yeah, well, so I'll take us back just a little bit to I graduated high school. I didn't really have any aspirations to go to college. I got a job. I moved down to Long Beach and then I lived in Seal Beach. I lived in Sunset Beach and I met some people that were going to move up to South Lake Tahoe. And I was like, hey, what the heck? I'm coming. And I'd never been there before. But I have to say, there was this feeling when we got to coming up Highway 50 from the Nevada side. There's this view of Lake Tahoe that's just absolutely gorgeous of the lake and the trees. And there was this sense in me like I was coming home and I had no idea why, because I'd never been there. But back to your question, Robert, about after the hospital and getting out. So by the time I was leaving Rancho, I had already discovered different ways to get more pain medication as well as dabbling in heroin a little bit. Someone
Mhm.
introduced it to me and they were like, here, do this and see
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
think. I was like, whoa, that's, that puts me almost to sleep. Thank you. Because I don't want to feel this. I don't want to
yeah,
feel any of it.
yeah,
And I had no real coping skills of how to deal with trauma. I had no real guidance on, what would be my boundaries or what would be the things I needed to do to create self-care and take care of myself. None of that was really available in the 70s. And my mom had just started on a journey of self-discovery for herself. And so she was in counseling. And she encouraged me to find some counseling. And I was just like, no way,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
I'm going this direction. And
yeah,
so I
Yeah.
got out of the hospital. I stayed in a house with a couple of people that I'd met for a while, and then I ended up getting my own apartment. I was probably about, I think, a year, as I think to look back on it and asking my brother and sister who are, closer to my age. My youngest sister was only 10, when my spinal cord injury happened. And, one of the things about our spinal cord injuries is they don't just happen to us. They happen to all of us, like our whole family, and then our friends too. And I had friends disappear because they couldn't handle it. And so I probably spent about a year in a real drug induced stupor that was, hey, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and this is going to be gone. And literally, I did wake up one day and I said, I don't want to do this anymore with my life. I need help.
wow,
And
wow,
I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm a drug addict. Hey, thanks for that. Thanks, Bobby. It's like,
No, and
woo!
I mean,
Yeah,
with
it was a
my
internal
stepson,
thing of
yeah.
like, no, you gotta do something or you will kill yourself even though you're not trying. And
Yes.
my mom was like, "Oh my God, thank you." And I went and got in the drug rehabilitation ward on the other side of the highway at Rancho. And
Mhm.
I went through the detox and then I spent several months on that ward and going through group therapy as well as working with a psychologist 3 times a week. And they were all busy at other times doing some kind of activities in sports because it was part of the rehabilitation for us of, you know, trying to move past the addiction. And they were just like, we're not doing anything for you. We're going to send you to the other side. And I got sent back to the spinal cord injury ward, and that's where I met Jeff Minbreaker.
Across the
And
highway, huh? You were
yeah,
across the
across
highway.
the highway. And then there were two people that I actually met while I was at Rancho the first time. Brad Parks came in and also Eric Walls. And I met them as I was getting ready to leave Rancho for the first time and then reconnected with them as I went back. And so I was over on the other side of the street and they were playing wheelchair tennis. John Chambers was there with Jeff Minnebraker doing the recreation therapist gig.
Mhm.
And they were inventing wheelchair tennis. And then they were teaching Brad, and Eric was a part of it. And I was learning, okay, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis. I still wasn't that hip on playing these sports. I was kind of like, I don't know. And I really didn't get motivated until I worked with the Department of Rehabilitation and they got me into Long Beach State, our alma mater, Robert.
Yes, yes.
And I found Disabled Student Services. And when I came into Disabled Student Services, it really was the feeling like the angels were speaking to me saying, I found my people. And now I was clean, not taking any more drugs. I had some tools in my toolkit on how to deal with the trauma that I've been through and things that I needed to do to dismantle the the things that had happened to me and the ideas that I had incorporated in myself that I wasn't good enough and dismantling those into, yeah, I have value just like anyone else. And Disabled Student Services, I found my community and I wanted to hang out with everybody that was there. And I remember also seeing a gentleman who then became a really good friend of mine who was using a power chair and he was using a device to speak with. And I came to find out that he had cerebral palsy, CP. And I remember looking at him and thinking, my own bias and internalized ableism was, I'm not like him, and I was thinking I'm not that disabled kind of, and kind of thing, right? And the truth is
Yeah.
that we are all one and we are the same, and that disability at that moment was a bad thing in my head and I was trying to run away from it. But what I learned through sports and my community was that it's a part of my identity and it isn't a bad thing. It's just a human life experience we will all have should we live long enough. And
Mhm.
and so Long Beach State was this moment of transition for me of not still wanting to be a competitive athlete because I didn't really know what was out there, but to be with the people like me and learn how they dealt with this, right? Because I still needed more skills. And I'm still building skills at almost 70 years old. I'm still building skills. But that's wanting to be with other people like me.
Well, and the Disabled Student Services at Long Beach State was was a new concept because I mean when I was going there, they had to move classrooms because there was no elevators in the building, and they had to put it downstairs where, all that. And when David Sanfilippo came in there and he had, uh, actually put some of the disabled students to help work around there because they, to help you register classes, just different things like that. And it was really, the campus really went out of their way at that time for what I was going up against then for myself as well. Other than just dealing with Hard Fact Hill, there was a hill there that you had to go
Yes.
from the upper campus to the bottom of the campus, and then you had to go back up, and you try to find different ways to go through. But it really was a good program, and I think they set the precedent on a lot of other colleges to have that program. And like I
I
said,
agree
David
with
said,
you. I
yeah,
agree with you. I think they were way ahead of the curve. We didn't, the Rehabilitation Act had just been written in 1974, or 1973, and it still hadn't had the regulations
yeah,
written to enforce it until 1977. So there was no Americans with Disabilities Act. That was 1990.
yeah,
So I agree with you 100%. Long Beach State was way ahead of the curve. And I remember, yeah, the heart attack hill. When I first got my classes, I didn't take that into consideration, and I had upper campus, lower campus, upper
yeah, yeah,
campus, lower
yeah.
campus. I was
And
taking naps in the
yeah, I tell you,
afternoon.
you guys, this hill, I don't know how many degrees it was because it was brutal, and I was in
Oh,
good shape
yeah,
then. I had a lightweight wheelchair, that quadra chair, and all that stuff. But going up and down that hill, so and you'd be at the very front of the campus, and your next class, you had how many minutes to get there? It was like, but it was a good program, and that's maybe what I want to emphasize because that
yeah,
made a big difference in going to school. I mean, yeah, and you used to see a lot of people in chairs there. I mean, it was a good draw because you were taken care of there, and they
Yeah,
they presented the classes as they needed to for accessibility.
Well,
and
and
if
the
I,
other thing too is the professors that were there were all very much, or at least the ones I interacted with, they
Yeah,
were all very much willing to adapt.
yeah,
And that was really awesome because there was a lot of adaptations that needed to happen
yeah,
for us that were using wheelchairs as mobility to be able to
yeah,
participate. I mean, I signed up for a swimming class, and I thought it was a swimming class, like learn how to swim. It was the swim team. And
Yeah.
I had no idea, and I ended up on the pool deck, and the the coach and instructor, John Urbanchek, came out, and he was like, "Hey, this is the swim team." And I was, "Oh," and he goes, "But if you want to stay, I will
yeah.
put
Cool.
you in
That's
the
cool.
pool, and I will teach you what to do, and you can be a part of this team." And that was my first real introduction to, I would say, competitive sport, because I was a part of that swim team, the only paraplegic. They were all non-disabled people.
Yeah,
And he would, if they were swimming 100 meters, he'd have me swim 50. And I got to participate in pretty much everything that was going on for them. Their little shaving parties that they had, I participated in. And yeah, yeah, you know how swimmers, they usually
no,
shave
yeah,
half
because
of
I
their
was a
shoes,
swimmer,
right?
Candace. No, I was
Oh,
a
you were?
swimmer, so I remember in high school doing the shave down parties, your back, and it's just yeah, they it's
Yeah,
pretty funny.
yeah. It was such a
You're like,
bonding experience. And
yeah,
they were all very inclusive. Like, they were bringing me in. And John Urbanchek was just like, we're going to figure this out. And John also, when I talked about Dr. Stedman, Don became a world renowned swim coach and US ski team swim coach. But he and I, again, we met years and years later after I'd retired from sport. I was at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee's offices doing a program with the Foundation for Global Sports Development, where they bring youth in to experience the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. And John was there, and we ran into each other, and it was just like, oh my God, you were like the first person really that said, come on, let's do
yeah,
this. We'll figure it out. And it really changed my life, because that then made me want to be a part of the competitive sport that was out there that disabled people were doing, and participate in building it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a for me that was a critical time, because I was going the same thing when I went back to school and things like that. And it was a campus that I was going to before my injury. So when I, got my stride back again, I kind of went back to school. But it was um, it was just kind of a weird time. Just with the culture of the '70s, late '70s. There was a lot of stuff that that you wanted to be part of, and sometimes you maybe didn't feel like you belonged, but you do find your sense of community, and that makes a
Hmm.
big difference. And then especially in the college atmosphere, I think people are more open-minded, a little bit more open-minded, at least what I experienced back then. But again, it was a different time than it is now for people that are getting injured now. But yeah,
And it's so funny when you think about you guys talking with the old days, Metabreaker and Randy Snow and Dave Pike. And I don't know if you saw or you can see the picture up here.
yeah. That was the one
Oh,
that was at
Dave,
Casa
and
Colina.
yeah, and his kids. Oh my God,
It's
that
an
was
older, yeah,
in Sports Illustrated.
yeah. So I have
That's
that.
cool.
I got it at a. I used to work at a rehab place, a rehabilitation place, and when we closed down, I'm like, I'm taking this poster. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
still, but it just seems like so many greats came out of that time and really
Mhm.
uh, built the path for us in sports. Uh, and sports isn't for everybody. And kind of like you said, wasn't into like thinking I was going to be this athlete in my time, but it really helps, you know, with the getting over some things, learning new things, and not just sports, but more about life and about how to, deal with this and how to deal with that. And learning that the doors just open up and the travel and then the experience you get of meeting different people with different disabilities, not just spinal cord. And you're like, wow, there's a whole nother world out here. And it becomes like a family. And you really, really find your base and you just really understand, like, I'm going to be okay. I mean, when I found
yeah,
sports again, I just and knew that I can be competitive in my own way. It's just funny how we can just, look back on it and go, that's when I knew everything was going to be okay.
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree with you that sports is a really easy way to rebuild our self esteem and our sense of accomplishment, right? I mean, that first ball that you catch is pretty significant, right? And and so that feeling that I got on in the swimming pool with coach or band check was one thing, but when I connected with all the disabled people that were a part of that Southern California community that were developed because wheelchair racing was being invented, wheelchair tennis was being invented, and and making it inclusive for everyone, we turned into a, a bigger community that was supportive of all the different changes that we had to make to transition through the different barriers that were already in place by society saying, no, you can't do this. No, you can't go there. I mean, right? Like you all
yeah,
will remember this is that there were no curb cuts. And
yeah,
so if you wanted to get off a sidewalk, you had to find a driveway
yeah.
and then you
Or
had to
they
wheel in the street.
Jump.
Yeah. And you had to
part
wheel
of
in
the
the
part of the
street
rehab
across.
part of the rehab was showing you how to go wheelie down the curb and how to get back up it. And but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a well, there in the '70s. I remember because there was no curb cuts. I remember that, but uh, there was a movie that came out, Coming Home, with John Voight and Jane Fonda, that was filmed
Right.
over at Rancho. And
Mm-hmm.
back in their culture, that was like '76, '77. They weren't sure if that movie was going to be what they expected it to be, because they weren't sure how people felt about Vietnam and how about the wheelchairs and things like that. I mean, that was in the late 70s. So the culture, was a whole different game. Um, they were trying to break those barriers, and sports just happened to be the development of wheelchair tennis and things like that. Happened to help break a lot of those barriers for our generation.
Bobby
Yeah, absolutely.
or Robert, weren't you in the movie?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it was it was a it was just weird because of what the culture was all about. And like I said, and Candace said it, just the no curb cuts. That was like that's unthinkable now. Now they got them
Yeah.
everywhere with all the little
Yeah.
bump things on it too. Now for
Well, I
the
have to
vision
say,
impaired,
I live downtown LA, and there's still some spots that we don't
bad
Yeah,
have.
there's
spots.
no,
So
it's not
we still
perfect. It's
got
not
work
perfect
to
out
we still
there.
got work
Yeah,
to do in those
yeah.
spaces, and
Yeah.
and making sure that all areas are movable for everyone. And when I so my 27-year career in competitive sport in Paralympics, it really showed me in the beginning, my first one in 1980, that there were a lot of opportunities to not just self advocate for what my needs are, but to advocate for other people, and not just necessarily disabled people, but all people being able to have that freedom of self determination, right? Like being able to
Mhm.
determine, I want to go here, I want to do this, I want to be that. And those opportunities being available, and they weren't available for any of us. And my vehicle of wheelchair racing and being a part of the group that pioneered that sport really taught me that we can figure it out if we work together. If we
Mhm.
collaborate, if we come together and we listen to each other and then build upon that. We, as a group of wheelchair racers, really wanted to develop the wheelchair division in the road races because we were spinning around the track and that was okay and it was working for us. But we really loved the road racing. That was the coolest thing. And we were evolving the equipment so that it could adapt to the road with the steering devices and things. And we developed this group called the International Wheelchair Road Racers Club, and we came up with the guidelines for race directors on how to integrate the wheelchair division into running races so that we could all be a part of the same thing. Because one of the places where I really felt inclusion for one of the very first times back into the non-disabled world was in a 5K, and it was here in
Mhm.
Los Angeles. And the feeling was for me, because there was some other folks in wheelchairs and we were going to do this 5K, and was that we crossed the same start line, we did the same course, and we crossed the same finish line. And that for me was this moment of realization that, yeah, why not? Why
Mhm.
shouldn't we be a part of this? And the work that we needed to do to dismantle those old negative stereotypes and biases around what disability is and isn't. And sports has that wonderful, I like to call it the automatic door opener, that we have now where you push the button and
Mhm.
the door
Mhm.
opens.
Which
Sports
I
was
love.
like that. In any conversation, if I talked about sports to someone and my Paralympic career and, and they want to know about medals and things, I could start talking about that and then I could transition into the bigger stuff like, okay, so how are we going to make sure public spaces are available for all people, people who use wheelchairs, people who are blind, people who are deaf, all of that. Like, how are we going to make it available for all of us to participate and then embrace each other's knowledge that we bring to it? And sports was that way to be able to open that door and then just go right in. And I am forever grateful for the people that I met during it, the people that I engaged with, the people I didn't even like that were a part of it, that were a part of my space that I learned from. Because there, my feeling is that there's always something to learn from a space and to be open to that. by suspending my own bias and my own ideas of what I think something should be and hear about what somebody else thinks it should be.
So obviously, you weren't known for the tennis player or the swimmer. We know you as somebody who finally got into wheelchair racing, and that you the 5K, which 3.1 miles, and back then I don't know if you have it, Shawn, if you can, our producer, bring it up, but you started out in a four-wheel racer.
Yep. We had those four-wheel racers, the little black and white,
Yeah.
and yep, that was. And
Yeah.
you can see I got the tie rods on there and everything because that was the beginning of our steering that we invented to be able to compensate for the crown of the road. Because road races were in the road and the street has a crown so the water runs off of it and that kind of thing, and our wheelchairs wanted to run towards the gutter and we didn't always get the center of the road, so doing that adaptation made it so that our wheelchairs would run straight and we wouldn't be just working one side of our body trying to keep out of the gutter. And yeah, that was, what was really cool about this picture is in the early 80s, the minivans came out. Chrysler brought out the first minivan, and I saw the opportunity. I was like, man, the minivan is so cool for someone who uses a wheelchair to be able to get around in and get their lifts, but they were not working that well and things. And I went to Chrysler and I pitched it to them. And for 10 years, I was sponsored by Chrysler. I had one of the very first major endorsements from a major corporation that they used me in a lot of their advertisements, and they had me come to a lot of their conferences, and they supported me for 10 years with a new minivan every year and some financial support. And I got that right in front and center on my helmet and on the side of my wheelchair. Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
those knees up so close, man, you see now, remember they got them underneath them.
now isn't it really now you sit on top of your knees and tuck behind you, right?
Yeah. So when I retired in 2006, that's how I was sitting. It's the way they're sitting now with the three-wheeled wheelchair. Yep, just like that. And thank you. And putting that up there and being a part of the Invacare group and Top End, building the racing chairs, it was a real fun time of transformation of what our equipment can look like and where it will go. And it really hasn't changed that much. The chairs have gotten a little bit longer, and most people are using the disc wheels, but I got the opportunity to take it all the way. And then in 1989, I tried downhill skiing, and I was like, oh, I think I could be good at this. And my my marriage was there it is my marriage was breaking up. My husband found someone he liked better, so we got divorced, and I was like, heck, I was living in San Luis Obispo. I'd been there for about 5 years. I was, you know what, I think I'm going to go up to Tahoe and see if I'm any good at this skiing thing. And I was, and I moved up there, and I stayed in the Truckee Tahoe area for 25 years and transitioned from downhill skiing competitively and to cross country skiing, which really was again very similar to wheelchair racing in the aerobic capacity piece. And that was something that I really loved a lot, was the aerobic piece
That,
of
the
the
constant
exercise.
that constant
Yeah,
movement.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's
And the other thing too, Bobby, was that I was a hiker before my accident, and I thought it was something I would never do again. And cross country skiing was hiking again. Like under my own power, I could explore an area, a valley, a mountain, and and then that felt like I'd come full circle. And so I love all of the sports that I had been a part of and the competitive aspect of it. But I knew in 2006 I was finished with that, and that I wanted to spend more time the experience of disability and understanding that there's nothing to be afraid of, and that our history and our laws and our sports and our languages and our people all have great contributions that continue to bring us all into this main flow together. And so I developed some curriculum around understanding the experience of disability, a kids program called Disability is Possibility. And for adults, it was a little less fun in that it's understanding disability. And I really find that to be a place where I get the opportunity to see the light bulbs go on for non-disabled people, and them feeling like, ooh, okay, maybe this isn't something that I should be afraid of. And also work in advocacy and policy development. I'm a part of an organization called the U.S. International Council on Disabilities, and we work internationally with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is the very first human rights document to include people with disabilities. The human rights documents first were written in 1948. We're hearing a lot about it right now because of what's going on with the genocide in Palestine. And so in 1948, they didn't include people with disabilities in that human rights document. Our inclusion in human rights was not till 2008, when the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability was written and put up for signature as well as ratification. And almost all the countries in the world have ratified the CRPD. The United States is one that has not. And
Still?
Yep. The United States still has not ratified it. So the U.S. International Council on Disabilities, one of our intentions is to educate people and the American public in general about the CRPD, the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, so that when we do get a Congress that we could try to get it passed in, we'll be ready with knowledge and understanding of why this is important for everyone. It's not just about disabled people, it's about all of us.
Hmm. Don't you also do some testimony and advocacy in the travel side for the disability community as well?
Yes, thanks. So I got to travel with my sports, right?
Yes.
And all of us that have traveled know that outside the United States, there's not a whole lot of laws in place that protect us and support access for us. Now that we have this CRPD and countries have ratified it and signed on to it, there are more laws and there is more development. But in the travel space, there still is a lacking of understanding that everything, and I think in all spaces, if we think about it, everything we do that makes it accessible for disabled people really makes it better for everyone. And been papers written on this called the curb cut effect.
Yes.
And basically, yeah, and I love that you're nodding your head. Basically, it means that once that curb cut was put in, so someone who uses a mobility device, it works for
I'm worrying
everyone.
about doing
The mom,
a
yeah, exactly.
The moms with
Yeah. So with the
strollers, the
travel
delivery
industry,
man with a, a push cart.
the
the
cart,
yeah,
yeah,
the wheel bag.
Yeah, a
yeah,
dolly.
everybody, the person with
Everybody
the
can use these
bicycle,
things.
And
Yes.
yeah. So
I recently just took a picture. I don't know, Shawn. I sent it to Shawn, but we saw you on the Olympic Committee as well, and I saw you on C-SPAN. And so
oh
with
yes,
you and Chuck
Yeah.
and a couple others, so I didn't know. And Shawn, if you want to put up a couple of the, you sent also about some of your other work of doing that, but you know, so I think when and it you see this in a lot with sports athletes and after a career in sports, where do you go from there? And usually that gives you a good platform to use your voice. And it's really great to see, someone like you know, I guess you can say what fighting, or I don't know if you want to use that word fighting, or uh, making paths and waves for the future of those that
Hmm.
need that little push and that help
Yeah.
and that the understanding
Awareness.
and awareness. Yeah, and so it's great that we can rely on the past to come up for the future,
Hmm.
and for
Oh,
all that
thank
you
you.
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
thank you, Bobby and Robert and Lewis. It's one of the things that I innately felt is that it's not just about me. When I was figuring out my way and then connecting with my people and figuring out how they did it and seeing if that worked for me, and where can we make the changes so that no one's left behind, and that each and every one of us knows that we can make an impact because everybody's here for whatever their gift is to give. And for myself, I
Mhm.
really was so sad. Oh yeah, that's from the C-SPAN.
Yeah.
mhm,
I was so sad about how I felt left out, and I didn't want anyone else ever to feel that. That picture, excuse me, that picture that was up there, that was there's a commission that has been put together, a congressional commission to explore what the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee has been doing or not doing for athletes, and not just disabled athletes, but also athletes without disabilities. And because we've seen a lot of abuse, and I'm sure that you all heard about the gymnasts that were abused by their doctor, and
Yeah.
mhm,
Larry Nasser going to jail. So that sparked the conversations about the concepts that have come forward on athletes being taken advantage of and abused, and that the systems that are in place don't support the athletes. And so I was testifying there as an athlete and an advocate on the experiences of ableism that are rampant within sports, that only certain sports or certain people in sports are considered valuable. And
yeah,
that's what ableism is about, is saying that some bodies are more valuable than other bodies, and why we need to educate. Again, I'm the educator.
mhm,
Why we need to educate on what ableism is and why we need to dismantle it, because ableism is connected to racism, and racism is something we need to dismantle also in the world,
mhm,
in this country specifically, because it continues to discriminate and oppress people. And
mhm,
people with disabilities are also a part of that group that is being oppressed upon. And we need to recognize that and then take take actions to dismantle it and then build a better system, right?
mhm,
We need to build a better system. And I hope until the day I die, I get to be a part of building a better system. And I have to say that the three of you, and also Live to Roll, you're all building a better system here. The podcasts that you do, the activities that are available, you're all active in building a better system. And I I appreciate being on here today, but I also commend you too for the work that you all have been doing in all of your lives, but continuing to build something better. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think we all have a special little gift. We all have an experience of something of why or something happened to us where we want to give more. And mine was into peer mentoring. I became a professional peer mentor, and that's how I got to work at Rancho for and be a supervisor for many years. And because when I got hurt, no one came to
Yeah.
my room and said,
Yeah.
"No, it's going to be okay. Look at me. I can, pop a wheelie and I play sports." And I had one gentleman come in, and he was a wheelchair racer. I think he just loved it and just low injury and just like it's going to be okay. And I'm like, well, you got your arms.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great,
Exactly.
but what do you do with these quad hands? And yeah, but
Yeah.
it's so I, eventually after I got out, when that first phone call came and the therapist said, "Hey, somebody from your high school got hurt. He's about the same level as you. Can you talk to him?" That was my passion. That was my love, And then thank God I found sports, and now someone in their 50s continuing to find new love and new advancements with sports. It's great. And I think that's where we all make the path of those that are coming up and those that are not injured yet and for tomorrow.
Yeah,
I think,
and and it's nice to make that connection with someone to say, yeah, they were my true mentor. Looking back now, my true mentors was Ed Owens and Jeff Minnebraker. And
Yes.
it's funny because and it's important to have that because that is my realization there. Looking back, maybe at the beginning you didn't really realize how much they really were molding you in a sense to accept and to keep moving forward. But it's nice to have that and to keep establishing that now for a lot of these new and young injuries now, and to see somebody with positive attitudes and stuff like that, that goes a long way. It's just a I don't know what the words I'm trying to say. It's so good to see that, or
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
someone that you're teaching someone or encouraging someone or whatever, and to get some satisfaction from that. It's just paying it back, paying forward.
Well, and I want to say too, for me, being a woman, it was all men. And I
Yeah.
was just kind of like, where's the women in the beginning? It was all men in the hospital with me. And I felt so isolated. And then I met Mary Wilson Bogle, and she changed my life. And
Oh,
I saw this other woman who was using a wheelchair, and she was vibrant and she was beautiful and she was having fun, and she was involved also with Jeff and
The
Brad
quadrature,
and
right?
Eric
Quadrature.
building the quadra chair. And
Yep.
so she was a businesswoman, and I was just like, yeah, I can be that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, it was that
was
moment too for me to be like, oh my gosh, there's other women. And
yeah.
so throughout my
mhm.
career, I have really focused also on making sure that women are included, that women are getting equitable treatment, women
Yeah.
are always a part of the thing that we're doing, because the statistics that I understood, and I haven't looked for a really long time, so there may be changes now, but back in the day, it was 80% of folks with spinal cord injuries were men. And,
oh yeah.
so there weren't that many women. And a lot of women weren't like myself, really. They weren't involved with sport before their injuries. And so why would they go into it? And oftentimes they would go back to a life or doing something that was quite isolating, and not having the
Mhm.
opportunities. So, yeah, Mary, you're the one.
I,
Like,
I
did
think
you know?
here in the, I was just going
Go
to
ahead.
say in the chat here, the Angry Quad makes a great point. He says, I find this community is a rather tight group that has each other regardless of sex. And I feel that way about Candace because I've known Candace, we've known each other, 10, 12 years or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I think
And
longer than that. We met up in Truckee.
yeah, up in Truckee. But uh, I knew of you back in the 80s when I first got injured. And you, along with all the guys we've been talking about, was one of my heroes. I didn't know you as a peer mentor, but you were the one of the people that when I looked at Marty Ball and Dave Kiley's kicking my butt up and down the court. I was watching you race along with these guys, and you were right there with them, kicking their butts when they were kicking yours, and it was awesome. You
Oh,
know,
thank you. It was. You're right. It was awesome. I had so much fun
it
with them.
it was a
Oh my God.
golden age of sport. It really was.
Did you know Emily too? Emily Ball?
Yes. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Emily Cotton Ball.
Cotton, yeah, Cotton Ball. There you go.
Yes. Yeah. Good friends. Really good friends. And I met Emily while wheelchair racing, and yeah, Emily has always been an inspiration for me too, because she, she made a path for herself that was creating these opportunities for people, again, that were disabled and using wheelchairs to be the best they could be, right? Because she was getting them into these chairs that
Yeah,
fit them. Because
Yeah,
I know, Robert, you probably will remember this. I don't know, Bobby and Louise, if this happened to you, but we were
I
put
had a
in these big
quadrant.
50 pounds stainless steel Everest and Jennings wheelchairs
Yeah.
that didn't fit us. Like,
well,
No.
they
that's
were too
that's
big.
what the rehab had for us. But then luckily it was a quadra that. All right, you're not going to use this. This is the only piece of
Well,
crap we have here, but
I,
we'll use this
yeah.
one.
I remember when I got the first quadra chair, Jeff Minnebraker, that's when he was in Westlake in the warehouse there, it's
Yeah,
doing the thing. He goes, "This is
Yeah.
going to change. This is going to change your life." And I think he gave me the chair. But it was just, and it did. It changed my life, and then I kept in contact with him for a while. But yeah, that chair is the whole premise how the chairs are today.
Yeah, it was the first lightweight wheelchair. People like to say, oh, this chair or that chair, but really Quadra was the first one.
yep.
I remember Jeff cutting up my Everest and Jennings for me. And,
Yeah,
yeah. And then put me in one of their little prototypes, and the all of us, there was a group of us that um, we created a team. Greg Thompson was a part of it. We used to call him Cure. We were called the Southern California Flyers, and Brad was a part of
Yeah.
it. Eric Walls, Jeff. There was a variety of people that were a part of this little team, and we traveled to some different competitions and stuff together. But yeah, Jeff and Mary and Brad and Eric were building those quadra chairs and really, setting that foundation for understanding that we needed equipment that fit our lifestyles,
yeah,
folks.
and
Exactly.
color, and you needed color in them too, right? With
Yeah.
the chairs that were
Yeah.
coming out in all the color,
So,
anodized colors and
so
stuff.
Candace, what was the color of your first quadra?
Oh, you know what? They didn't have the colors yet. It was just the steel.
Ah,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
what did you have,
Mine was
Yeah,
Robert?
yeah. Or the
I,
aluminum, whatever they were made of. And I had the square tubing.
yeah, the square
I
tubing.
had the square tubing.
I
Yeah.
had the gold. I had a
square.
gold anodized frame with anodized red anodized hubs and the red front casters, little neoprene wheels. Yeah,
I
I
had
Oh,
the
Mine was
can
cool.
I had the candy apple chair with the blue and yellow hubs on the wheels.
all the colors. It was
I
Nice,
just
nice. Oh my
I
gosh.
just got blue.
And
I asked for
you
black,
know,
and they said a month later.
yeah,
oh my gosh, I
They,
had
yeah,
so my daily chairs, I had this idea that because it was an accessory, I needed to have it either black or silver because I needed it to go with all my outfits. And
Yeah.
so my racing chairs were the place where I blasted
expressed,
out
huh?
with color.
got it
Yes,
creative.
that I expressed myself.
We are sort of running out of time, but one thing I wanted to ask you, and we can have 3 episodes more with you, and one really about your all your athletic accomplishments and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
ton of them.
But the first, uh, when I was in rehab and my therapist, I don't know, did you know a Sherm Walker? Did she? I know she took the group that went, because you did Boston Marathon several times and won it, correct?
Yes.
And she popped in the tape and she goes, I was there. And she showed me the video of that famous year when it was raining. What was that? 1984,
I think it was two. I think it was two.
82,
Um, I think
and
it
it
was
was the
82.
big.
Yeah, I
It
said
was,
you wanted pictures of it
yeah.
from the
So I
newspaper
don't know if,
where the crash.
yeah, Shawn, if you have that, it's the crash. And so I don't know if you can just briefly talk about that marathon start, because it was a crazy start for one, in the rain, and two, you're on top of a hill going straight down, correct?
Yes. So the start of the Boston is at the top of a hill. And so I am in the very center there with a red top on and blue. My legs are blue. I have a black helmet and I'm
Oh, wow.
still upright. If you look at it, I'm still upright. But I got taken out by someone. And so the start of the Boston Marathon is up on a hill, and really in a wheelchair, we're going 40 miles an hour now. It's so
Yeah.
fast. And you can see we're still in our four-wheel chairs. And what happened with that was it was raining, it was slippery and wet. And Jim Kanab was trying out a new front end, and something happened with it. He fell over, and when he fell over, people started to try to avoid him, and they
Mhm.
started going down because they flipped
Ah,
or they
man.
ran into someone. And so, not long after this picture, oh, so this was 91. So it was
90.
91st
No,
Boston. Yeah. So
91st.
I think
Yeah.
it was probably 82. It was 82 or 81. I think it was 82. And so what happened was somebody came from the side of me on my right side and hit me, knocked me down. And when I slid across the road, one of my tires came off. And we carried CO2 cartridges on our chairs as well as a spare tire. And I got someone on the side of the road to right me, and I asked them to help me change my tire and put my air in, and off I went, and everybody was gone. And I put my head down and just kept pushing as hard as I could. I ended up winning the race. And Andre
Nice.
Vigier from Canada also went down and he ended up winning the race. And I remember crossing the finish line and bursting into tears because I had been so frightened and scared at that start and getting hit and all of it that I held it all in for the entire race and wasn't going to think about it. And it was such a testament to my ability to deny what had just happened to me. You know,
Fortitude.
I think human beings' superpower is denial. I mean, if I go back to when I was first injured and I was like, nope, this is not happening, not happening to me. I like became a drug addict. I was in such
Yeah.
denial. And this is like
Yeah.
I did it again during that race. I was in full denial that I had just been in one of the most scary situations in my entire life. And then I crossed the finish line and it totally blew up on me.
You were on the best drugs possible. Endorphins
Yes,
Well,
I
yeah.
and I have been ever
and
since.
adrenaline.
Yes,
For being
yes.
for
Adrenaline
recovery,
drug.
for people in recovery, sports is is a drug of choice. It's my drug of choice. I mean, I never feel better than when I get out and go for my push or my bike rides. It's just it's the love of my life. And if
Right.
you took that away from me, depression goes down. So don't take it away
Exercise
from me, or I
energy.
start shaking, and I hate it. It's a big part. Not only you won Boston a few times, but you were the first winner at the LA Marathon, right? For women's,
Yes, yes,
you and
I
Canal.
was in the first LA marathon and um I feel really bad. I'm not remembering what my results are. I think I won it 3 or 4 times.
So yeah,
LA.
something like
And then
that.
and I won Boston 6 times and I won a total of 84 marathons total in my career, so you know I did a heck of a lot more.
Wow. Wow.
The next time we
Yeah.
have you on, we need to get some video of you pushing because you had a hell of a
Oh,
push.
okay.
Your
Okay,
push was
yeah.
amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. You know, one
Does
of the
it?
things Barbara Chambers, who is my first coach for wheelchair racing. She said to me, you know, there's two things about you that are real standouts for her. And she said, one is you are coachable. Like I can totally coach you. I tell you what to do and you do it. And she said the other is you just have the prettiest push.
Yeah.
Well, we got to
See,
see that for sure.
that's what I loved about Jeff Minnebraker. Jeff taught me how to push. He says, "You're not doing it right."
Oh,
He says,
that is
You're trying to
so
push like
cool.
everybody else on the court. Let me show you how to push." And it
Oh,
made
I love
a
that.
world of difference.
That's why
Yeah,
he's so able
that
to. He's so quick on those turns and the pick up on the speed, and he
yeah.
Yeah.
was something else.
Yeah.
Well, and the whole
Well,
idea that we each contributed to the other is a big part of the disability community, I think, is that we, I think in general, the community is very open to each other and learning and also celebrating what the others are doing. And I know that with Paralympic sport, oftentimes people would say that watched Paralympic sport and they watched Olympic sport, they would say, wow, you know, I really love watching Paralympic sport so much more because you all really feel like you want everyone to be successful. That it doesn't feel like there's this dog eat dog kind of thing, which is a terrible thing to say. Let's strike that. Um, but that there's such a competitive nature that it doesn't support real human growth. But Paralympians and their sports feel like they really are in it for the reason that is about being better. Like they just want to be better. And
Yeah.
that there isn't this whole other piece to it. And yeah, and so I think that I think as disabled people, we have understood in our lives that anything can happen. And
mhm,
we're willing to share how we did something and not make someone else have to do that rough road to learn it. And
yeah.
and I think that's a really really beautiful thing about our community is that we don't feel like, well, because I had to go down that rough road, somebody else needs to just figure it out for themselves. It's like, no, man, I don't want you to have to figure it
I,
out.
I think to put it in the current vernacular, what you're saying, how we share with each other, we help each other out. We're not gatekeeping, which is a
Oh,
big
thank
deal
you.
in certain communities.
Yeah.
And you know, we're willing to reach out and share and take everybody along. The rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah, so well said. Thank you, Louis.
And it's so beautiful now to get out for the four of us when we were the four of us together at the sports camp in Pasadena. And the beauty of watching others and seeing how much this is still alive and it's growing more. And, thank God for organizations out there that get people out there to continue this and us to get to watch, uh, being that we
Yeah.
blaze the trail and it continues. And and I love it when they say, "Come on, get out here, Bobby," and it's like, no, this is your time. This is for you. This is your time.
Yeah.
I had my time, and plus, I don't know if my body's going to handle it quite the way
Right,
it used
right.
to.
You got to
A-
pass
Another
the
current,
baton for sure.
another current example. Look at Kevin Mather, who just a couple of years ago won the gold medal in archery in Japan.
Yeah,
It was Kevin that reached out to Damon Whitaker and said,
Mm.
"Come shoot archery with me. We need someone of your level. You would be awesome at this." And he's helping Damon get involved in the sport of archery. It's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, beyond sport in advocacy, coming up with new, younger advocates in the disability community that are educated, that they understand what ableism is, they understand what racism is, they understand what are some of the systemic barriers that are in place for disabled people, and how then to advocate for policy change, for changes in systems, and to be able to move us forward with the changes, because we still have not really seen the Americans with Disabilities Act be all that it can be. And we're coming, I think we're in our 34th year this year. And yes, this was, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. So were three of you there? Four of you,
I was
Shawn?
there.
Yep.
I bowed out that day because of the heat. I was like, no, and everybody who came back from that's like, oh, it was so hot, but it was fun. I know I missed a great day that day.
I was
Oh
in
my
the
gosh,
back
at
row.
Dodger Stadium. And so Sam Maddox, who is a man that has been instrumental for us in the spinal cord injured community in so many ways. He created the Spinal Network book in the beginning in the 80s. He and
That
Barry
was my
Corbett
Bible. That's my
edited that.
Bible.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam has he was the knowledge manager for the Reed Foundation for a long time. He's written this book called The First 90 Days, which is a book that you want to get to people when it first happens to them, their spinal cord injury, so that they can see what and where they need to be and what needs to happen and how to make it happen in those first
That,
90 days, because we all know those first 90 days are critical.
Yeah.
that
Yeah, what you
book,
gonna say, Louis?
we include that book in the gift baskets in the backpacks at the Triumph Foundation that we give to the
Oh,
newly injured patients.
Newly injured, yeah.
That
thank
book
Yeah,
is
you.
in every
indeed.
single one.
Yeah, Sam is a gem. Oh my gosh. Oh, there it is, right there.
Yeah.
Bobby's got one
Yeah,
right
Thank
there.
you,
there.
Bobby. Yeah,
Yep.
and so Sam, the work that Sam's done in this area. I mean, I think he'd be like a really fun guest for you,
Oh, yeah.
because
Yes.
he can really talk about the history. Oh my gosh, first 90 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and so having advocates that know that the information that's needed to be able to build the new system and the new policy that comes out there, that's one of the things that I'm working on now, is putting together some education around the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act, and some other pieces of legislation that exist now, so people can understand what they are and what our protections are. But what do we need to do to make it better, right? Like, what
Yes.
Right.
needs to be the next thing? And so we need young people and folks to be able to, again, like you said, Bobby, earlier, take it next to the next level, that our
Hmm.
little bodies are wearing out, and
That's
we have to preserve them as much as possible. So we're gonna teach you all how to do this.
yeah, to move
We,
forward.
we need to
Well,
help the next generation of disability. And I
yeah.
use generation and disability based on when we were injured, teach the next generation to pay it forward. How to do that. Yeah, you
Yes,
mentioned earlier in
exactly.
the conversation about reimagining ourselves. And I tell patients exactly what you said. Our rehab is not just getting better and learning how to use a catheter and roll a wheelchair and maybe walking or striving towards it. It's about reimagining ourselves, reinventing ourselves, and learning to up our communication skills. Yeah, because
Yes.
for
Oh my
us
gosh.
to teach everybody about
Yeah.
what our lives are about and how we can be part of theirs, you have to have the ability to communicate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that was, the thing one of the things you brought up there too about learning to walk. And, that's the thing when anybody who's has a spinal cord injury, the first thing you think is, I'm going to walk again. I'm going to walk again. And
Yeah.
that's okay. It's okay to think that, but get
Mhm.
healthy, connect with the community, and be ready. when that happens or doesn't happen. And that's an
Be ready.
ableist mentality that pushes us to that idea that I'm going to walk again, because that's what is considered valuable in our society, is walking. And what is the truth is, however people move around is valuable. And so I'm not trying to diminish anybody's hopes to be able to walk again when they have a new spinal cord injury. What I hope that people will take in is that it's a complete package, right? Like you got to be a part of the whole thing in the beginning,
Mhm.
and don't just put all your eggs in this one space, because it it could be
They'll get
different.
crushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be different than what you imagined, and dismantle that ableist mentality that you're only worthwhile if you're walking, because
Yeah.
that we all know that that's just a temporary position or activity.
Yes.
Yeah. Candace, it
Yeah.
was so awesome to have you. Uh,
Oh, thanks. It was awesome to be here.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, we're going to have you again. And like I said, we got a couple more areas to hit, and but it was
Yeah.
a gift to have you here. And um, we said our sponsors at the beginning, thanks to mobility professionals and urology professionals.
Yeah.
Paid the bill right there. Thank you, everyone. Any last words of wisdom that you want to give us before?
Look at
Yeah,
Louis with the
he's going.
dark. He's like, check it out. Oh, you know what? I say lead on, man. Lead on.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome.
Thank you
Um,
so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I've had so much fun. I do too feel like we could go on and on and on.
yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Especially
We would
about
love to have you as a
the
guest
essay.
anytime.
thank you.
My words of wisdom is, listening to the four of us, if you're not living here in Southern California, if it wasn't so dang expensive, I would say move here, because that's what you get here. You get a lot of that. And I feel, when I talk to a lot of people in other states that are in rural areas, it's just like, oh, I wish you had what we have, and you can really sense when you get a form of community, and you can really just expand your wings and fly to wherever you want to, with the things that we've got to do out here. And I know other
Yes.
states with bigger cities always get to do that, but when I hear somebody that lives in this small little community, it's just like, oh, you got to get out here. You got to get out here, because the the uh, possibilities are endless out here.
Yes.
What you can accomplish with yourself and with your ability.
I'm
Yeah,
just
or
so glad
disability.
Candace moved back to Southern California. You're
Yeah,
you're back, baby.
yeah, and we can talk about that too. But
Yeah.
everyone, thank you so much for joining us at the chat. We couldn't even. We had so many great things to say. We couldn't get to as much. I know. My friend Paul asked if you knew Colette from Canada. She was
Oh, yes,
yeah. So
absolutely. Oh my gosh.
I'll have to
That
I'll have to
woman
let him
is
know. Yeah.
amazing.
So, and then what high school did you go to? So I can tell
She went to
Edgewood.
Mickey.
Edgewood, yeah, because
Edgewood,
Mickey went to
right down the
Northview,
street from me.
or yeah.
I went to Northview. Mickey went to Covina High.
Yeah, Cabina
Uh,
High. There it is.
Robert,
71.
didn't you go to San Dimas or something?
No, I moved out here in the '80s. I grew up in the
Oh,
South Bay
okay.
area,
Okay.
Yeah.
but I
So,
love it
But
out here.
well,
there's a bunch of us from the San Gabriel Valley.
Yes.
thank you so much. And
Thank
till
you.
next time,
All
live
right,
to
live to
roll.
roll. Yep.